I'd been living with David on his family's old dairy farm for about 6 months. The property sat on 40 acres of pasture and woods, with the nearest neighbor almost 3 miles down a gravel road. It was a Thursday in late October. We were having dinner on the couch and watching some documentary about deep sea creatures, when suddenly the dogs started barking, that throaty warning they usually saved for coyotes or strangers. David muted the TV, and we sat there listening. The barking continued, focused on the front of the house. I heard boots crunching on gravel outside coming up the long driveway. I got up and looked through the window. Our porch light was on, but the driveway curved behind a row of cedar trees, so I couldn't see who was approaching. The dogs were going crazy now, scratching at the door. David grabbed his phone and pulled up the security camera app. We'd installed 2 cameras after a string of rural break-ins this previous summer. The front camera showed a man walking toward the house. He was tall and wearing a dark jacket and jeans. His hands were in his pockets, and his head was down like he was deep in thought. He stopped about 20 feet from the porch and stood there without looking up or calling out. After maybe 30 seconds, he started walking again and climbed up the steps slowly before stopping in front of the door. I stayed by the window, trying to see his face, but he was standing at an angle where the porch light only caught his profile. David walked to the door, but didn't open it. He called through asking if he could help. The man didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice sounded almost bored. He said he was looking for the Hendersons. David told him nobody by that name lived there. The man asked if he was sure, and said it used to be their place. David explained we'd been there for 6 months, but the man neither responded nor made any move to leave. David asked if he needed directions somewhere. The man didn't answer, but we could see him move closer until he was maybe a foot from the door. We watched him put his hand on the doorknob. David immediately told him to step back. The man didn't move at first, then quietly, almost like he was talking to himself, he said he thought he smelled chili. My blood went cold. The kitchen window had been open earlier for steam. I'd closed it after dinner, but the smell could have drifted out. David's voice got harder, and he told the man he was asking him to leave, right now. The man finally stepped back, but instead of walking down the steps, he moved to the side toward the window where I was standing. I jerked away from the glass. David called 911, and while he was talking to the dispatcher, I pulled up the camera app on my phone. The man was standing at the side of the house now, looking up the second floor windows. The dispatcher said a deputy was on the way, but was 20 minutes out. I kept watching the camera feed. The man walked around the back of the house, disappeared from view, then reappeared on the other side. He was circling the property slowly, like he was looking for something. David grabbed the shotgun from the closet, but didn't load it. He just held it in case. The dogs were still whining and pacing between us and the door. The man came back to the front porch and climbed the steps again. He knocked the same 3 times. David didn't answer. The man tried the doorknob, and it rattled but didn't turn. We'd locked it after the first knock. He tried it again, harder this time, jiggling it like he was testing how secure it was. Then he stopped, stood there for a moment, and walked down the steps. I thought he was leaving, but when I checked the camera, he wasn't heading toward the driveway. He was walking toward the barn where our truck was parked. We kept tools and equipment out there, and the side door didn't lock properly. David called the dispatcher back and told her the man was still on the property. She said the deputy was 10 minutes out. We watched the camera feed as the man disappeared into the barn. He was in there for maybe 2 minutes. When he came back out, he was carrying something long, like a pipe or a piece of wood. He walked back toward the house. David unlocked the door, stepped out onto the porch, and raised the shotgun without pointing it at the man. He told him he had the sheriff on the phone and a loaded gun, and he needed to get off the property now. The man stepped about 15 feet away. He looked at David, then at the gun. He sat down whatever he was carrying, and it clattered against the gravel. Then he turned around and walked down the driveway slowly, at the same pace as when he'd come up. David and I stood on the porch until the deputy arrived. The officer searched the property and found what the man had been carrying. It was a tire iron from our barn. No footprints or tire marks were leading away from the property besides the driveway. Nothing explained how he had gotten there or where he'd gone. The deputy took a report and told us to keep an eye out. That night, David and I didn't sleep. We sat in the living room with every light on, watching the security cameras. Around 3 in the morning, the motion sensor on the front camera triggered. The figure was standing at the end of the driveway, too far away to make out details, but I could see the shape of a person watching the house. David grabbed his phone to call the sheriff again, but by the time they arrived, the figure was gone. We moved out 2 months later. We told people it was for work, for a shorter commute. but the truth was, we couldn't stay. I'd been